Well, welcome. I'm Rich Clark. I'm the chairperson of the art committee at the Dance Palace, and I got to curate this and get to know Sally, which was quite an experience and a wonderful one. We've had a lot of fun together. Um, I've been doing this for the last couple years because up until COVID, the Dance Palace had a gallery where we would invite emerging artists or established artists in the West Marin community to show their work for a month. And when we hit COVID, we couldn't have anybody in the building and we couldn't have any kind of a reception. And so we came up with this idea that we do virtual galleries. And we did about 15 of them, and the artists really liked them. Commented that there was a real change because they weren't stuck with one sentence interactions with people who were there for the reception. They actually got to talk about themselves, share their history, and the questions kind of put them back into a frame of mind where they really looked at their work in a different way. So we've been excited about this methodology, and I hope you all enjoy it tonight. Like Claire said, as we go along, if you have questions, put them in a chat, and at the end, Claire will read them, and Sally will do her best to answer them. So I got to meet Sally, and I had the opportunity to choose to curate her work because I saw somebody brought to our art committee a number of photographs that I think must have been from a gallery exhibition, maybe down in Bolinas.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and I could not believe that I was looking at glaciers and polar bears, and the excitement was phenomenal, and that was true for the whole committee. So when it came time, I got the curating job, and it's really been a lot of fun. Sally has been here in West Marin since the early 90s, and was at UC Berkeley for how many years were you there?
30.
30 years at UC Berkeley. She was the Henry J. Vox Distinguished Professor of Natural Resources. And that, I think that natural resource connection has really shown up in her glasswork, and I think you're going to have a good time seeing that. But she isn't just a glass artist; she's also a photographer, and that started a long time ago. And I'm kind of hoping that you'll give a little bit of history on that early photography, and then we'll talk about how you get photography into glass.
Okay. Well, as some of you may know, I started taking pictures when I was 4 years old. I asked for a baby brownie camera. This was in 1948. And I knew exactly what I wanted to photograph. There were some swans on the pond at the golf course. So we went down and took pictures of the swans. And I've been taking pictures seriously as I have known how ever since. And I think that photography is a way to see things and to think about what you're seeing and to focus other people's attention on what you're seeing. And I think glass is even better at that. And
you spent some time a lot of time. You've been to the Arctic a lot and the Antarctic.
Yeah.
And that'll show up here today. But
yeah.
How often have you got?
Well, I've been to Antarctica 3 times. I've been to the North Pole once, but the North Arctic is much more settled, much more open, and it's much easier to get there.
Yeah.
So I go there, like to northern Norway, to Nordkapp, or to Svalbard, or to some of the Greenland or Iceland. Oh, Greenland or Iceland. Thank you. And so I just go there whenever I can. I'm not sure I'll ever go back to Antarctica again. It's 2 rough weeks at sea, basically. And I like the North. So
So you brought back the North photographically,
I
and we're
tried.
and we're going to get to see some of that.
Yes. Well, I need to remind people that Antarctica means no bears. So there's no bears in the South, and the Arctica means bears. So if it's a picture of a penguin, it's from the South. And if it's a picture of a polar bear, it's from the North. And so most of my work concerns polar bears because it's what we call in my former business, charismatic megafauna. So I started working in glass in the 70s, making stained glass, but stained glass is flat and it doesn't move and it doesn't make a huge mess. And I was looking for all of those things in what I wanted to do. So I started making kiln form glass, and then I started making glass molds. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that. I'd like to say that it's relatively easy to get a photograph on a piece of glass. So you can run a piece of special paper through your Xeroxer, and it comes out like this, and it just prints on the glass like that. It's just like any other decal that you would get. I don't know how many of you had Tom Mix decoder rings, but I had decals from that. And so you make a little piece of glass like this, and then you can see how it shows up in a piece. And that's really, really easy. And I do a lot of that. If you want to do it in color, like this is one of my favorite polar bears. And if you want to do that, you have to send it out to get it done in color. I can't do that on my Xeroxer. But this is kind of a fun thing. And then I ran the turquoise in there with just glass powder. Here's a friend of mine, Richard James, takes crow pictures, and I put them on glass as well.
So let's go to that first piece that you did when you threw photographs of it, and there's an evolution of it.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I tried to do was fairly literal, and I took a piece. I took a picture that I really liked. That's the Ross Ice Shelf, and if that's in the South. And if you're interested, some people estimate 70, some people estimate 80% of the freshwater on the planet are on the Ross Ice Shelf. And I thought, oh, I really like that picture. I'm going to make it in glass. And I was in a class and I was trying to learn how to do that. And so that's the picture. And then in the class, you were supposed to draw it and make plans for how you were going to turn it into glass. And so I have a picture here of how I drew it to try to turn it into glass. And then in the next picture, I'm sort of working with the photograph and also trying to figure out what colors to use and all that stuff. And then I cut the glass, and that's what it looked like before I put it in the kiln. And this is what it looked like when it came out of the kiln. And I don't really like it. It's static. I think it's boring, and it doesn't talk to me about either the beauty of the ice or the fact that it's being destroyed. So I started learning a whole bunch of different ways to try to make the glass flow. One of the nice things about working with ice and glass is that ice and glass have a lot of similar properties, and a physicist could probably tell you that's not true. But to my eye, they respond to heat in a very similar way. They flow, they blend, and that became really important to me. And it became important. I had a graduate student who was giving a lecture in my class, and I don't do the numbers. You can climate change science is a lot of numbers, and I'm not numbers. So I invited him in, and I expected him to put all the data on the board and convince us all that the climate was changing. So what happened was he came in with two friends of his, and they brought in bags and bags of ice and ice blocks and just a lot of ice. And then they brought in fans and candles, and they had a blowtorch, and they just wasted half of the lecture time setting up this display of ice melting all over this physics lab, if you really want to know. So I was livid. I mean, I figure when you've got 600 people in the room and you waste a minute of their time, you've wasted a lot of time. So 20 minutes, 30 minutes click past, and he's setting up this ice, and I was about to have a coronary. And so then he goes to the podium and he says, well, I guess you're wondering why I spent all this time setting up this ice to melt. And, I was grinding my molars, and I said, yes. And so he said, well, I want you to be aware every minute of every day, everywhere you go, that ice is melting. And if you're not thinking about that, and if you're not aware of it, you are missing the most important issue in your life, and the one that's going to kill your children. Well, I got to tell you, I've seen lots of those nice data-rich lectures, and I don't remember them. What I remember is this kid's, well, he's not a kid anymore, but he was a kid then, lecture, and the dramatic impact that had. And I decided that what I was going to do was to bring the image of melting ice into everybody's home, so that they would not forget that it was melting, and that they would learn to take care. And so I started making a lot of glass bowls, which nobody paid very much attention to, because everybody has glass bowls. I mean, Pyrex has been around for a long time. I tried a slightly different method, and this is Pat de Verre. And you can see, I think, that the lines from this go into here. This is one of my photographs, and the lines from here come into here, and the shapes. And I thought, oh, that'll look fragile, and it's static. It doesn't flow. So I sort of started to not like that either. So this is very good for some wonderful things, but flowing ice, I can't make it work. I have friends that can. The teacher that taught this course, my friend Alicia Lamne, it's amazing. So I started to work with molds. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is the first thing I tried. And it's a mess. I mean, his feet flowed all into the glacier, and it didn't turn out very well, but I thought, this is what I want to do. But before I could do that, I still had to have things at Open Studio that people could look at. So I thought, well, if they don't like glass bowls, they'll love glass spoons. So I started casting glass spoons, and I thought, that's fragile. That will make people be careful. That'll make people think about the ice and how it's going away. And the fact is, they thought about it so much, they didn't take it into their home, and they couldn't see it, and it didn't remind them, and it was a big flop. So I decided to be a little more artistic. Now, this is a lost wax casting, and I think you can see that the color in there flows wonderfully. And that was my first shot with white and clear. And that's a little bear that I got in Greenland. And so working with lost wax casting was one of the first things that I did that satisfied my impulse to get fragility into people's homes. And people do like these. One of the problems, though, is if you want it to look a little under pressure or crappy, you have to make the glass look a little under pressure or crappy. And so you have constantly this tension between making it look like you did the job well on the glass and making it look like the glass is fragile and it's got a dent. Or a hole or something. I really don't like, these amazing photographs or Sierra Club calendars of ice, because they look gorgeous. And you look at them and you would never think that there was anything wrong. So I try to make sure that there's dings and spots and errors that make it look just a little worn. One of the things that I have trouble with is using purple. If you look at glass, if you look at ice, there's a lot of purple in the ice. It's purple white, and there's stripes of purple, and there's huge swaths of turquoise. Ice is not white, so I moved on from that. And this is my grandmother's bear. I don't know if you can see that. Whoops, it's from, oh no. And so I started to do that. But yet this has got so much glass in it. I love it. It's gorgeous. And it's a little banged up. If you looked at it closely, you could see that the ice was in trouble, as is the bear. I'm trying a different kind now where I have more control over where the ice goes, and I am adding a bear to it. I love casting bears. And the way these get joined, if anybody, it's cool in my field to say, well, this is cold fusion, so that cold fusing, so that you think that you did this in the kiln. Actually, cold fusing means glue, and I will glue this onto the glue. What I'm working with now is, here's another one. Everybody should have Ericatata in their life. This is my favorite way of saying the polar bears are missing. It looks like there's a polar bear in there, I think. I hope you think there's a polar bear in there. But in fact, it's a hole. Instead of letting the glass flow to make the shape of the polar bear, you put in plaster so the glass can't flow in. So now I have a polar bear shaped hole, and I hope you can see that. Let me see. I have a pencil. So you can put a pencil right into that bear's feet. And this is really, really fun, and really, really, you have to keep your wits about you. And as my wits diminish, this is getting harder and harder, but I love to do it. And then you get to polish. It took me 3 months to get the plaster out of here once I got the bear in. What I'm working on now is what I call tippy cups, which is a combination of lost wax and this plaster holding the shape. So the end result is I have a glass sitting on a glacier. I'm also working now to include the local environment. I have the glass sitting on a boat. I don't know how many of you have been out here, but if you recognize that boat from 20 years ago, now I'm making glasses that sit on the boat, and the boat looks terrible now. And that's why I've made it clear, because it too is disappearing. But to do that, you have to make both a dropped vessel, but you have to drop the vessel onto a piece of plaster so that it won't go where it's going to meet the bottom of the
How high up do you drop it from?
Well, I drop it about 4 inches. Sometimes you can make these all different sizes. I drop this about 8 inches, and then you have to cut this off and clean it. It comes out, I think, did I show you this? That it comes out of the kiln like this, and then you cut it off.
Yeah, this one.
This is how it goes into the kiln. There's a hole. There's what we call a blank. Put it in, it drops, comes out like this. Whoops. And then you cut that off. It's kind of fun. It takes a little while to get used to cutting it off, but once you do, it's okay. So that's what I do.
Well, you told me a story about the stained glass that really attracted you back in the 60s, I guess, in Berkeley. That you got into stained glass because it was available, and it hadn't been available in colors, and it was something that was kind of novel, and people.
Well, yeah. I think one of the things that's interesting about glass, and I haven't researched this, but this is what everybody, you can sort of get a picture of it, that during the Second World War, uh, the glassmakers in Italy, primarily in Murano and Venice, a lot of the secrets for how to make colored glass that didn't crack each other were so closely held family secrets. So you cannot take a beer bottle and a green beer bottle and a brown beer bottle and put them together, because they expand and contract at different rates and they'll crack. So getting different colors of glass, and this is just a piece of bullseye glass that, you know, you can slump and make a beautiful plate. Getting colored glass that would go together and not crack was a major step forward. And the people that usually get credit for that is the Bullseye Glass Company, which is where I get most of my glass. And so a lot of skills and techniques started to flow out of Italy in the 50s and 60s, and glass went from being a secret craft to a specialized craft. And then they invented computer-driven kilns. And it used to be, if you were going to slump something, when you slump a piece of glass or drop it, you have to heat it up at a certain rate, hold it at a certain temperature, and then cool it off at a very slow rate, which means you sit by the fire with a bunch of sticks and hope you maintain the proper temperature. And starting in I think in the 70s and early 80s, first the glass became available, and then these programmed computers got better and better and better. And I got my first programmed computer, I think, in the 90s. And it really makes it simple. You can turn it on and leave. And that's why a lot of people, artists and instructors and people like me got into it in the last 30 years, because the whole technology has changed. And a lot of things that it used to be they did only on Murano, you can now do in your home studio.
Well, you were in trouble if you took the secrets out, weren't you?
Oh yeah, you get shot. It was like being in China with silkworms. I mean, it was just not a good idea to leave with the silkworms. But this is Marini. I don't know if you can see it, but it's got a little design on the end. And whoops, can you see? I hope you can see that. And you can use this. You cut it in little pieces, and then you can use Marini like to make a bowl that's very intricate and interesting. And that is a copycat of a technique that the Italians have been doing for centuries, which not me, but someone figured out how to do it in a simple kiln in your home. And then there's all sorts of wonderful people, like Alicia, or everybody should have, this is called wax casting, and everybody should have an Erica Tata in their life to teach them this. So people are developing this stuff and teaching it. This is a technique that was developed by a teacher, and you can take that class and then you can go anywhere you want with it. So a lot has changed since sort of Murano fell apart as a secret, and then the technology of the computer and the mass-produced glass. And it's just, I think one of the fun things about my life in glass is that I got in just as it started to take off, and so I've sort of been riding the elevator up.
Yeah.
So it's really fun.
So you really have presented the concept of fragility of the environment through the fragility of glass. But there's other things that you do too, and I wonder if you can speak to some of the plates, or you did do a little bit already. But
well, the thing I think I said that I like to do most, I mean, making one of these castings is like, by the time you get through pulling and hauling, I mean, you can do it in a week. but it usually takes me a month. But one of the things that I really like is to make gifts. And I think I showed you the plates. I mean, I think Ken showed you the plates that I made for my niece. But here's one. I was working in the studio with one of my friends, and for some reason, this picture of Pierce Point was very popular. So I went into to the computer and I typed her daughter's name, and eventually, someday, Lily will get a plate with Pierce Point on it. Another way that I like to collaborate is we got interested, my partner got on the board of an organization that's very concerned about native bees as opposed to European honeybees. And I could talk about that for a while. But anyway, we started to work on native bees, and Romani, a friend of ours, who's also primarily a tattoo artist, drew a series of 8 native bees, and I put them on plates, and those are good for gifts and also for donors. Most often I work with Mary Ann King, one of my students, and I think I've said this, but she's a kayaker, and she made this, and this is her birthday present. So I love making gifts, and I love being able to customize things like that. It's just really fun. I mean, I love it when it flows, and I love it when it comes out wrong and I have to figure out why it came out wrong. On my website, I have a section called Oops, because, most people, they put on their website and everything is gorgeous and you think, what's wrong with me? So I decided I would throw discretion to the wind, and I have about 10 things that I really screwed up, and they're kind of interesting. I mean, there's so many ways to screw this up. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah.
good. Put that back together. What else you want to do?
Well, do you have any places that you really see yourself moving into? Some stuff that technically has not been available to you that you're beginning to flirt with?
Well, I think the thing that's clearest to me is that my molds are getting smaller. If you're going to make a large piece and you have the wet plaster and the glass, I mean, glass is really quite heavy if you stop to think about it. I can no longer horse that in and out of the kiln. So I'm trying to avoid the very large molds and do more of these flat things that are fun that I can handle. And I mean, I'm never going to just sit down and make a plate, but if I have a reason to make a plate. But like this little glacier is small enough. The other thing that's interesting to me was, first, after I got interested in the poles and talking about the poles, then I noticed that we also live in a fragile environment. I mean, I don't know how many of you live in Inverness or have been to my house, but I think it's true that we're 8 feet above sea level. And so the fragility of the environment in which we live really has come clear in the last 18 months, maybe. But I'm starting to figure out how to work with that. And the bees and the bee project is really an important step on that, although I will never give up my polar bears. The other thing is we just came back from Central Asia, and that's a desert area which has been heavily mined and heavily converted to agriculture, and heavily, therefore, the water has been utilized recklessly. And I think it's true that the Aral Sea now is almost empty because they drained it for cotton. And so I'm thinking, what could I do with these skills in a desert environment?
Sure.
So that sounds like fun to me. But mostly, I love the gifts. My cousin Susie has a friend that just recently got a PhD in marine biology, and she wanted some you can learn all the time with this stuff. So she wanted a gift for her friend that would reflect her dissertation topic, which was Caribbean black loggerhead turtles or something like that. They're green ones too. I didn't know that. And then they're different in the West Pacific. So we got this, my friend Marianne and I got these, and she drew the turtles, and I don't know turtles. So I sent it to my friend Lynn and I said, "Are these good turtles?" And Lynn is a arid lands ecologist, so she sent it to her friend, who's a head of the turtle program at Santa Barbara. And he said, "Oh, this is lovely, but the beak is all wrong and the scoots are all wrong. So now you're all going to learn about scoots." Scoots is the little fringe outside of the turtle shell along the edge. And that is apparently species specific. And if your scoots are not correct, it doesn't look like what you thought it looked like. So we fixed the scoots, we fixed the beak, and I think that's a wonderful gift, and I love it. And I really like doing that. So that's sort of where I'm working on the tippy cups. I'd like to figure out how to make that boat better. I mean, my boats are sort of bad, but that's where I'm heading now, is more gifts, I think, and also maybe a desert environment.
Mhm.
We've got plenty of deserts here that you can worry about too, and also plenty of lakes that are going dry.
Photography. I'm curious about what you're doing in photography at this point.
Well, it's interesting. I'm doing more photography than I ever did in my life. And I have been, for many years, a very serious scuba diver. And of course, then when you're a scuba diver, you have to become an underwater photographer. And so I used to fight my way through Miami Airport with 3 large plastic cases of camera equipment. And scuba diving with a camera is sort of like swimming underwater with a large folding backyard garden lounge. And it's really, it just sort of takes a little of the flavor away of looking around. And so I blew out my back, so I don't dive that much anymore. So I said, but then I still had my 3 cases of crap. So I said, I'm getting rid of all of this. I'm only going to go with a cell phone. And I mean, I still have a closet if anybody's interested. I have a closet full of filters and reflectors and, you know, and my cell phone is better than anything I ever had. And I have it in my pocket at all times. So I'm not waiting for a birthday party or a trip to Paris to take a picture of the Eiffel Tower. I take pictures of spider webs. I take pictures of flowers. I take pictures of everything I see, and then I play with them and I look at them and I see things that I didn't see, and then I go back and look at it. And I've learned a lot about plants because I take pictures of them and then I ask people, "What's that?" So we have a whole project going with those little moths that are on pipe vines, and they're species specific to the pipe vine, and the eggs hatch, and it's just amazing. And we have one right down our street, and I've been photographing it for about 6 years, and I don't take a plastic case of anything. I just take my phone. So that's what I'm doing now, is I'm trying to be more deliberate and less tech equipment bound, because you can really wreck your life with photography equipment.
Yes, I've been there, and I've sold all my equipment, and I only carry an iPhone with me now, and it's really good.
It might be fun for you people to know that Rich and I are working on a project with these decals. We're going to put some of his decals on glass because he has a show coming up, and it's going to be really fun. So that I'm looking forward to doing that. The pandemic was very hard on my glass because, you know, most of what I do, I don't know if you can tell this, but this is set up to have 3 people in it, my studio. And we used to just go around and and take classes, which they no longer offer in person, and take and work in each other's studios. And I mean, a poor substitute. When we couldn't do that, we all took up Pokemon, which is not not as good. That's what we did. But I really like the camaraderie and the collaboration, and I love it that we had to call this guy at Santa Barbara about the scoots, for God's sake. So that's what I'm doing now.
Have you done anything that's related to your underwater photography in glass?
Yes. And it's so miserable that I stopped, and I sort of thought I better think about this again. And I'm actually taking a class next spring, which I think will help me. But that was, of course, where I went first. And it's very hard, very hard. And I didn't have the skills.
Yeah.
Now I think I have the skills. I think underwater may be where I get good at Pat de Vere. I don't know.
Have you ever seen that collection of flowers at Harvard?
Yes, I have. What do you want to know about it?
Wow, I was fascinated by him, and I just thought that you could speak to it well. And I just wondered, maybe talk a little bit about it. It's been there, what, 150 years?
Oh, it's been there quite a long while. I don't know if you are all familiar with this, but Harvard, sometime around the time of the Civil War, I think, there were these two, I don't know, it was a father and son or brothers, but anyway, they started making models, physically correct, functional models of flowers, and they have octopuses and a bunch of stuff. Anyway, and they used them as teaching tools. And now and my dad took me there when I was about 4 years old. And we've been back many, many times since then. I have a lot of photographs of these flowers. And I always think that, and I've been back recently with good friends. I think glass was always in the back of my mind because we kept going to that, and it's amazing. And if you're in Boston and you don't know what to do, it's worth a trip out to Cambridge to look at these flowers. They're just stunning, and they're absolutely, they work right. I think it was Michelangelo that said he took great trouble to make things the way they were. And somebody asked him, is that because you want them to look right? And he said, no, it's because I want them to work right. And these are teaching tools, and they're just astounding.
I seem to remember that the head of whatever department those things ended up in was troubled because he didn't have accurate plants that could survive.
Yeah, well, these survived. They've survived longer than you and me together.
Right.
So they were teaching tools, and I don't think they use them anymore, but they were teaching tools then, and they are just astounding. There are a lot of people that do a really amazing glasswork. Well, Alicia and Erica for two. And but these glass flowers, and I have to say I have a special place in my heart for the glass octopus, are in a class by themselves. It's fair to say.
I think that's great. Why don't we go to some questions and see what we've got out there that people have been wondering about? And
for sure. Well, there are a couple questions. I wanted to start with one, though, Sally, which is that I know that when we were talking about this, you had some geometric shapes, and I don't feel like we've seen those slides yet. And I was wondering, maybe we could share that.
Well, the fiddly bowls are geometric.
Mm-hmm.
The geometrics start with stringer sheets. You put lines on a piece of glass with glass lines, and the glass lines are just, this is what it looks like. And it looks sort of like a very thin, what's a thin spaghetti, a vermicelli or something? Anyway, so you get these lines, and then you cut them in a number of different ways. And one of them is you can cut them and make squares. And I think I showed you this. And that shows the lines offsetting each other, lines making squares. And that's fairly simple. Another thing you can do is cut them herringbone and then make a fabric looking thing. And this is a bowl that I dropped. I'm not sure that that makes the best use of the technique, but I was experimenting, and I think that's kind of interesting. Let's see what else. Oh, then I showed you the little piece, but here's a piece which is called an optic. And you get your lines, and then you put a piece of glass over the line, and the clear glass distorts the lines underneath. And so you get these rather wild things. And that is something I'm just beginning to play with. I think you can really do fun stuff with that. I make a lot of little plates right now. The glass is expensive, and it's good if you're going to experiment to try something little before you try something huge. That much I have learned. But they do very different things, even on the same piece, from the top and bottom. So I'm really enjoying experimenting with this. And I love the geometrics. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's really, really fun. And except for these fiddly balls, which I showed you, it's relatively easy. You have to keep your wits about you. And as I said, this is a challenge in the era of declining wits, but it's really, really fun. I love it. Oh, here's another one. This is a different technique. This is using frit. And as you can see, it's set up with tape because I'm still polishing the edge. I don't know if you can see that. But this is another kind of a geometric that requires you to measure things and have them come up outright. And it's kind of interesting. You know, I'm not a measure things right person. So this is all new to me, and it's not challenging, but it takes me a long time.
Thank you. We do have some questions. I'll start in on them. So Peg Smith asked, will your latest trip on the Silk Road influence your upcoming glass works in any way?
I hope so. God, that is such a different looking place. The light is different. The culture is different. I mean, I don't know anything about it. You know, I've been reading about the Silk Road for about 15 or 20 years. So that's what I went to see. But you can really get a feeling for how these people live differently from us. And there's a huge overlay from the Soviet period. You know, the Tsarists moved in, and then the stands that we were visiting were part of the Soviet Republic. And now they're sort of coming into their own. And they're all a little bit different, but they're all coherent, and you can get a feel for that. And I don't know how that's going to play out, but I've already started to try to think about it. So it'll be fun to see what happens. It will certainly change my palette. One of my first instructors said, pick a palette and learn how to use the colors, because some colors aren't compatible. And if you put them together, they all turn sort of brown. So you have to sort of know your palette. And I know this palette. I mean, I can do blue and white and dark blue and light and purple. And I can also fake it in Inverness seasonal colors. But if I'm going to go, yellows and reds are made out of different things. They're made out of, well, gold for one thing. And you can put my blues into the kiln 20, 30 times, and it won't affect the colors. You put red into the kiln 20 or 30 times, and it'll just, I mean, it turns black after 3 or 4. So you're getting to know your palette is good, and I'm going to have to push into a different palette if I'm going to really change what I do. But I'm looking forward to it.
I have a question from Sue Brayton. What were the classes you took in New York? Were they with Steuben Glass?
Well, Steuben Glass, yes, they were. Steuben Glass no longer exists. The place that I take glass classes in New York is called Corning, which is where Steuben used to be. And I don't think Corning makes Pyrex anymore. I think that they sold that, and now somebody else makes Pyrex glass, which I mean, my mother had. The Steuben glass, they sold it, and somebody made such a mess of it that they bought it back, and I think they closed it. But the Corning Glassworks makes a lot of the optics for virtual reality and those Google glasses, and they're very heavily involved with the Defense Department. And they have an amazing library. They have the best library in the world about glass, and they're just building a whole new set of classrooms. And Corning is sort of one of the major seed places for glass artists, and it's a lot of the really good artists that are going to teach at Corning.
Great. So let's see. A question from Dick Schmidt. A question from a fellow traveler. Which trip has made the most impact on your art?
Antarctica. I mean, Antarctica is amazing. Svalbard is amazing, but Antarctica is I mean, it's mind blowing. I mean, the Ross Ice Shelf. I mean, I used to do a little bit with water law and policy. And when somebody says 80% of the fresh water in the world is right in front of you, and you look up and down for, 80 miles or 90 miles, I mean, the scale of Antarctica is just unbelievable. And when they say that iceberg is melting and, have a care, they mean it. Have a care.
So next we have Vince says, hi, Sally, can you talk about how you made the vase that I have on the screen? I'm not sure, Vince, what, maybe that's a screen saver that you have on your screen. I'm going to move forward with that since it's hard to see.
Well, can you, it's on my,
Oh, okay.
on the little square where my face should be.
Yeah, maybe we could try to spotlight that. Let's see.
I can't wait to see what it is.
It's the one you made of the mussels that you may not.
Oh, yes, I can tell you. Well, I can tell you what the vase looks like. It's pâte de verre, so it's basically glass. I don't know if you can see this, but it's not sheets of glass and it's not smooth. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's powder, and you get glass not in sheets, but in grains, and then you make a mold, and then you put the grains in the mold and you pound it in. And I have a little pounder right here. This, my friend Alicia makes these tools for her students. So you put this is in a plaster mold, and you put the grains in, and then you tap them. They don't make that sound, I have to tell you. And if it's flatter, you can do that. So that's how you make the bowl. The interesting part of that one is that it has mussel shells on 4 sides of it. Is this Vince Christian?
Yes, it is.
Oh, well, that was in your show.
Yeah, yes.
Anyway, so what I did in addition to that was I took a mussel shell and I made 4 mussel shells that are sort of freestanding. And this is what it might have looked like. So this isn't a mussel shell. But anyway, and so into the mold, when you make it, first you shove the shell, and then you into the clay, and then you tap it all around, and then you make the plaster mold. I'm not explaining this very well, but when it comes out, the shell is stuck on the side of the bowl. So it's relatively simple to do. It's simpler to do, I'm now discovering, than it is to explain it. But you make a plaster mold, make a clay mold, stick the shell in, pour plaster around it. The shell will come out and be stuck in the side of the plaster, and then you put your frit, this is called frit, in, and then you get something like that. So it's fiddly, but it's not lots fiddly, and you need less wits, but you need more skill. I mean, you're not going to get completely lost about what you're doing, but it's kind of fun. And that bowl with the muscles on it, I made in a class with Alicia Lomney. So if I say I made that bowl, that's nice, thank you. But Alicia and I made it together. When you're working in a class, you can't say you made it yourself. So she and I made that together, which is sort of like saying I made it with Leonardo da Vinci, which is fine.
So we have a question from Lynn. Hi, Sally. I'd love to take a longer look at the red bowl with the squares that you showed briefly a couple of times.
This one? Oh, that one. This?
That's the
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the one that the slides are from, that is that slide on the top right there with it looks like little chevrons.
Sally, we never saw those slides yet. Can we go through those?
You never saw them? Okay, well, Ken, can you just get that? It's on my screen right now. Yeah, that's it. So you start with a stick like this. For this bowl, for the bowl in the picture, this stick would be blue. And then you cut it carefully, and there's a special square that you flip like this and that. And if you don't flip it this and that way right, you screw it up completely. But as you flip it, the colors follow each other around. So you get three sides that, at least in theory, are going to meet on a corner. And then you keep them all together, and you have to label them very carefully because, of course, they all look nearly identical. And you have to pick them up and get them on the plate. And then you have to build a plate around it. Once you get your design, then you have to cut pieces all around the plate, and then you fire it. And this is maximum fiddly. I mean, and I only do it when I have Alex or Jen here, my friends, because you really have to stay focused. And if they say, "What are you doing?" then I have to focus better. So it's a group project. They can do it without me, but I sure as hell can't do it without them. Do you want to see the plate again?
Yes.
Okay. There you go. These are just amazing, and I think they look great. Some of the stuff that takes a lot of effort, who cares? But these things, I think they're terrific. And from this, I started making these so you can get a set that matches if you have leftovers. It's kind of fun. If you want to come out and do it, we could try it.
Sally, we didn't really get to see the way that you worked with the casting of the bear. Can I pop that up?
Well, this is lost wax.
With the sprues?
Yeah, it's right there.
Okay.
This is lost wax. And what you do is you make a plaster, excuse me, you make a wax positive. And so that bear that you're looking at with the red things off his ears is wax. And so this is a boat, but it's what it looks like. That thing has already been made. I mean, that may be this, I don't know. But anyway, you make the bear and you put those red things in so that air can escape, so that the ears and the nose and the buttocks and sometimes the shoulders trap air. So you have to get the air out so that the glass can flow in. So you make your mold, and then around that, you will build a plaster mold. And here's a plaster mold for a boat, but it would be the same as for the bear. Here is a plaster mold for a spoon. And you can see the sprues are just coming out. For that one, I use toothpicks, not little red things. So once you get the mold built with the wax bear inside, or the wax spoon or whatever, you melt the wax out and you clean the mold, and then you put glass in it. And then with, we talk about the kiln gods. You fill the mold with glass, and hopefully the bear will come out. And if you looked carefully at this, you'd understand why I haven't used it. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little air bubble right there where I didn't get the sprue right, and it didn't fill. So now I have two choices. One is I can just keep it in the studio and maybe think I'll find something to do with the front of the bear. I mean, that wouldn't be bad. Or I can remelt it. But that's how you do that. One of the fun things is, how do you know how much glass to put in your mold? And it happens that glass weighs 2.5 times what the wax weighs. So if you're going to make a glass boat, and here's a glass boat, into your plaster mold, you weigh this and you put 2.5 times its weight into the mold. So and it's all this stuff that you have to remember. And I don't know if you can see this, but I have those are rags, but I have notes. And let's see, what's this? Oh, this is how to make those fiddly bowls. I have 2 notebooks of Alicia. I have 2 notebooks of Erica. It's just astounding. So you learn something every day.
I think we have time for one more question. And I see one here from Mary O'Brien. She said, Sally, do you feel sad for polar bears when you're making a piece of them and ice?
No, I don't. I think, watching polar bears, it seems to me they have a lot of fun. And they probably know that their world is changing. But as a general proposition, feel sorry. No, I feel guilty, but they don't make me sad. They make me angry. But that's when I get home and think about it. When I'm sitting there watching a bear, it's like unbelievable. And they come around with their cubs and they play and they stalk each other, and the males stalk the females, and you can watch it. It's just amazing. So when I'm working on it, what I feel is, am I really going to turn on the kiln to make a polar bear to protest global climate change? That's what I think about.
Thank you. So, Rich?
Well, we haven't tested these glasses.
Oh, go ahead. You should do something with the glasses.
This is water, and it's the best water you can get from the Inverness Public Utility District. And we're going to test these glasses. Hold on to it. There you go.
Oh, my goodness.
I think they work.
Oh, yeah.
So you need to say something, but they do work,
Skål.
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 That's good water.
I would go after this water anytime, any place. It's delicious water. I hope this has been as amazing to you as it has been to me. I really have enjoyed the energy that Sally has, and it's energy for the planet. It's energy for her creativity. It's energy for her storytelling. She just, the energy bunny. It's been a great thrill. Um, thank you for joining the Dance Palace event. We do this year. We've only done it once, but we were doing them every month in the past. I hope that if you feel so moved, you'd consider a contribution to the Dance Palace. We have an art committee that promotes shows like this, gallery shows like this, and it really helps us sustain that promotion. So we would love that. And I think that there's a way to do that. Is there a?
I just put the link in the chat,
Okay.
and so you can click on there or go to our website. And
It's also true that on my website, which is invernessglass.com, there's a chance to buy a lot of this stuff, and the money will go to the Dance Palace. So
yes, thank you. And I'll put the link to your email in there too. You can reach out directly to Sally if you're interested in purchasing work. Thank you so much. Rich, is there anything else?
This has really been a lot of fun. And I think that the thing that is precious about it is that most of the artists gives 30% of what they make to the Dance Palace and the balance they have for themselves. And her generosity is phenomenal. And I'm really moved by that. So there's lots of things to be thrilled about. Thank you.
thank you. This has been fun. Thanks, Claire.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm also going to share with you our website here at the Dance Palace, and we have a lot of things coming up. And the lobby gallery, the art committee has been amazing, and it's a thrill to witness everyone participating. And we have another opening next month, so check the calendar for that. Thank you so much, Sally.
Yeah.
Woo, 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 woo.